Hello, everybody. I think this is LiveMEEG. Let's go. We just rented an apartment. This is our headquarters. This is how our room looks like. We've been preparing this for a few days already, and we are in Marseille, right in the middle of the city. Let me show you what we have from the balcony, or the terrace, actually. All right, welcome to LiveMEEG. We are super excited, and let me introduce you to everybody in the place. We have first, why don't I have music here now? Okay, I don't have music, but that's fine. This is Clément François.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
This is Adrien Schramm. Manu Mercier is also with us.
Night.
Hi, everyone.
Et Anne-Sophie Dubarry. Okay, so we're getting ready. We are live. This is our main camera, our ambience camera. So I'm really happy to have you all here. I hope we hear me now. That's fine. Okay. All right. Thank you for joining us. This is our conference on good scientific practices in MEEG research. We are super excited because we have prepared a quite exceptional program for you this week. I mean, it is really exceptional because it's quite unusual to see conferences dedicated to good practices in science. Workshops, you see that sometimes, where people get together locally to talk about their practice, but a whole conference on GSP, good scientific practice, is in our field something I've never heard about before.
Well, now if it's a good or a bad thing, we will find out this week.
It's quite unusual to take the time to reflect about our practice, right? About our attitudes while we do research, to realize that we are humans after all, biased and lazy and fallible, to try to understand our limits and cope with them.
Nah, you don't have time for that. You need to work on your paper.
Well, here we want to make the counterpoint that it is absolutely essential to pay attention to our good practices. Specifically, we've seen numerous papers showing that not following good scientific practices is bad for us individually. We've seen famous researchers led astray by bad practices that seemed legitimate by the time they were using them. And as a group, many of us have heard about how commonplace misconduct has led us collectively astray. I personally remember my first confrontation with the question of having good scientific practices was this paper on voodoo correlations in 2009 by Ed Wool, where he showed that our practice was actually wrong and we had made circular inferences, what was then called double dipping. It made quite a huge shock in the community, and people starting saying, no, I'm not using bad practices. But we did in the past, and we didn't know about that. The power failure paper by Button and co-workers in 2013 was also quite a strong shake in the community. We realized then that most of our experiments were underpowered, and this compromised the validity of the findings that we were broadcasting.
Now, as Max just said, complying with good scientific practice can be quite challenging for several reasons. First of all, because current practices may not be actually good in the long run, and we may not know about it or realize that they are wrong. It is the job of epistemologists, philosophers, statisticians, but also methodologists and developers to analyze our practices and create the right tools we need to make our current best practices robust and good in the long run.
All right. And here are a few fine lines that we need to walk when we talk good scientific practice. The first one we want to talk about is actually very common. It's about the difference between hypothesis-driven and data-driven analysis. I'm talking on the one hand about those two approaches to scientific investigation. The hypothesis-driven approach, in which you design an experiment, you predict a difference of some kind, acquire data, test it, and find out whether your hypothesis was true in the first place. But there's also this rapid switch that we often do quite unconsciously while looking at the data. Oh, look at that difference here. I bet I have a hypothesis to explain it. Let me test it. The methods and the decision procedures we use when preparing an experiment. Think of a pre-registration experiment, pre-registered experiment, for example. Or when we look at data and interpret findings, are quite different. But we often use the same and the easiest method, that is a classical parametric test, perhaps with a correction for multiple comparison, but generally we don't change our complete inference process. The point here is that this needs to evolve. We cannot use the same decision criteria when doing hypothesis-driven and data-driven reasoning.
Okay, and a second concern we want to address is about sorting and organizing our data. One dilemma we face is to decide how much time we want to use now in order to save time later. Using a rigorous, clean working environment is not something we do spontaneously, mostly because we are always aiming somewhere a bit in a hurry. So we need to learn to devote a reasonable amount of time to sorting and keeping track of our work.
In a similar way, data collection can be led astray by our eagerness to go fast. Paying attention to all of the details of the acquisition procedure can seem quite technical, maybe not fancy enough for the great scientific questions we're asking. However, it is crucial to acquire high-quality, reliable, and documented data if we want to be able to reach meaningful conclusions. How important is your analysis if your raw data does not contain any meaningful signal? Well, tremendous progress has been done in recording techniques, allowing us to explore the brain at higher resolution and with always greater signal-to-noise ratio. We are already so much overwhelmed by data variability that is inherent to the data we record. Brain activity fluctuates over time and varies from brain to brain. But there is one sort of variability over which we have some control, so that we can substantially reduce with appropriate recording setups and following the right procedures.
The third dilemma we face as scientific is that of sharing, while maintaining strict privacy protection. It is the essence of the knowledge we produce to be shared, and that knowledge isn't only in the findings, but also in the data themselves, the programs we make to look at them, and so on. But individuals taking part in our experiments need to be protected, and their data handled responsibly. In a similar vein, we are often scared to be scooped, and may neglect sharing when not under the pressure to do so.
The statistical methods and the tools we use are so elaborate and complex that it is really easier to use them in a wrong way than in a good way. Creative use of methods can be liberating somehow, but the constraints need to be made clear and salient so that we as scientists cannot be led astray by misinformed shortcuts and easy button press computation, or by the amazing power given to us by the brute force abilities of computers. That test is insignificant. Let me put that in a loop and try all of the possible tests. I'm sure something will come up. A few years ago, and many people present in this room will confirm, we were running ANOVAs by hand. And nowadays, our desktop computers can run millions of such tests while we go for lunch.
And when it comes to communicating our findings, it's extremely important to do so in a rigorous, reliable way. Now, research evaluation currently rests mostly, if not exclusively, on the number of papers that one is able to push out in a year.
Yeah, we all know what it feels like and the extent to which the pressure to publish, get a job, get recognized from the community can cannibalize our practice. Think about the Simon's paper about false psychology, for instance.
Interestingly, it's only recently that reaching out to the public has gotten increased attention in peer evaluation, for grant application, for recruitment.
But these are some of the topics that we are going to talk about this week at LiveMEEG.
By the way, shall we talk about using good practice or best practice?
We have had that discussion among us about labeling this conference with best or good practices.
We also thought about great practices, but seriously.
The term best practices is in a sense easier than good practices because best can always be situated. It can be best now, but something better comes up in the future, and it's not best anymore, but that's okay. It can still be best now. Good, on the other hand, has to be true not only now, but also in the future. And it's quite a challenge to claim to be running a conference on good practices forever, right?
Well, so why on earth did we choose good practices?
I know what we did, because best is really an overused term. Everything is best. Best buy, best sell, best do your best. We don't relate to that attitude.
So somehow our judgment got carried away by all these best is better than the rest, because there's something about that we don't like.
Hey, I think you guys went off a tangent now, right? Don't you want to go back to the topic of the conference or something?
No. Actually, I think we're really right at the heart of our topic. How can our judgment be carried away like that? How did we choose good practices, which we think is impossible to attain anyway, since we don't know the future, instead of best practices, which would have been okay?
Well, this is where our emotional self took over. We refused to use the best, not because of the meaning of that word, but because we found it somehow uncomforting. We found the word to be somewhat loaded with a lot of competition and rivalry.
You think we can start a conference and still hesitate about the title we give it during the opening session?
Well, I bet we can.
Actually, I remember why we choose good practices. Just because we don't want to do bad science, and we simply do our best.
Right.
Okay, Manuel, Max, you have a session to prepare.
Okay, let's go.
Let us finish, please.
See you in a few.
Yeah, indeed, we have a few more things to tell you before we get into the hard stuff. So this week, our program will begin every day at 2 p.m. in the afternoon Marseille time. So we'll run 2 successive sessions, each dedicated to a specific topic, with 3 or 4 brief talks. Tuesday, there will be 2 parallel tracks, which you can attend entirely or jump from one to the other.
We have decided to have fairly brief talks because we know how intense these online meetings can be. So let me share my screen here so we can walk you through the schedule.
Okay, we gotta make it.
This is here. So again, can everybody see my screen now? Or the window? Adrien? Est-ce que do you see my screen or do you see the window? Can I leave that open now? Is everything okay, Adrien?
Wait a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the schedule includes 10 to 20 minutes talk followed by 30 minutes discussion during which we will try to trigger cross-talk discussions about the topic of the session. These are critical times in which we really count on your insights and curiosity. Because this meeting is online, one of the major challenges for us will be to create a dynamic, welcoming, and friendly atmosphere during the whole conference. Broadcast is a nice tool that fosters lively interaction, and we will make good use of it. You probably already saw that chat on the right side of your screen. Don't hesitate to interact with others. There's also a Ask a Question button on the bottom of the screen. You can use it to post questions on the current speaker or to upvote for those you like. At the end of each talk or session, we will ask a selection of best or good questions. Also, just so you know, all sessions will be recorded and available on podcast for replay as soon as they finish.
Okay, so let me quickly walk you through the whole program to give you an idea. So today, in a few minutes. We start with a human factors session. Where will we first highlight our limits and limitations as humans doing science? We will then look at scientific practice that is gaining momentum, namely pre-registration. This consists in sending your experimental plan for review before collecting and analyzing data, and get a, in principle, acceptance for publication, no matter the results you get. And tomorrow gonna be a big day. We'll have 2 parallel sessions track. One track will include a session on collaborative tools, introducing several very nice tools that foster collaboration. The second session will be about reliability, introducing practices that can help improving it. So the second track will include a session on data collection, showcasing various data acquisition setups, and finally a session on coder tools, which will introduce 3 selected tools supporting good scientific practice.
On Wednesday, we start with a session dedicated to software use, where the authors of MNEP Python, Brainstorm, EEG Lab, and Filtrip will tell us how to properly use their software. The next session will be on signal processing, where strengths and limitations of the methods will be presented. On Thursday, let me show you Thursday. On Thursday here, we will begin the day with statistics, your favorite topic, I bet, and continue with the invited session on Artemis, agreed reporting template for EEG methodology international standard.
Okay, and finally on Friday, the last session will take a step back and go beyond the signal, looking at our practices and trying to reflect on them from a different perspective. Of course, what would be a good conference without a few surprise events now? So posters will be on display every day starting at 5:45 p.m., so Marseille time, and this for 2 hours on a quite original virtual platform called Gather Town, which we hope you will enjoy.
Now that we are almost there, and just before we begin, we would like to warmly thank our sponsors and those of you who donated for this event. Without you all, this event wouldn't have seen the light of day in the beautiful daylight of Marseille. Let me just give you a small practical information here on the website. You've seen me scrolling down over the program. You will see Crowdcast link for separated sessions, so you can access those sessions by this link here. I hope you enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's also a way to access the sessions directly. So Adrien is telling me from.
So on the top of your screen just right now, you see schedule session 1 of 12, and it's the welcome session, okay? So we're getting ready for the second session, the human factors. And so either you go, as Jess and Sophie showed you on the website, or you just click on the scheduled gray banner, see it expands, and you go on human factor. That's easy.
Thank you, Elia. Thank you for your messages.